It being 2 p.m, we'll move to questions. And Senator Cash.
Thank you, President. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The Easter long weekend begins in 4 days. It is the busiest road travel period of the year, with many Australians wanting to drive hundreds and hundreds of kilometres, but worried that if they do, the bowsers will be dry along the way. Regional communities, tourism operators and travelling families all depend on fuel being available. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is telling Australians to go ahead with their Easter holiday plans, even as more than 870 service stations have run dry or are missing at least one type of fuel. Will the Prime Minister guarantee that he will get fuel to those empty pumps before Good Friday?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
As you know, President, through you to Senator Cash, the Prime Minister has held a national cabinet today to deal with the fuel supply and supply chain issues which are impacting on our economy. And I'll come to some of the announcements made which go to the response to Senator Cash. But I would start by saying first that the conflict in the Middle East represents an unprecedented shock to energy markets, and the longer it goes, the more significant its impacts here in our economy, but also in the global economy. The National Cabinet today agreed a national fuel security plan for governments to work together to keep Australia open and the economy moving. And the Prime Minister went to that plan in his announcement today, and he explained that there are 4 levels in this plan. We are currently at level 2, which is—
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Point of order in relation to relevance. The plan may be the plan, but I'm more interested in Good Friday, 4 days away.
Thank you, Senator Cash. The Minister is being relevant to your question. Minister Wong, please continue.
It's precisely what the ongoing supply, distribution and supply chain impacts of the conflict in the Middle East is precisely what the plan is responding to. What I was about to say is that we are currently at level 2 to keep Australia moving, but there is also the capacity to go to levels 3 and 4. I'll come to those in the future. The plan is designed to keep the community and business updated. It is designed also to ensure that there's a consistent response across the Commonwealth, states and territories. It reflects the fact, and this does go to your question, Senator Cash.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Well, in the final 17 seconds, it is a point on direct relevance. Is the fuel going to get there by Good Friday?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
I again say responsibilities in relation to fuel go across different levels of government and also industry partners. And the commitment from the Prime Minister and all First Ministers is that we will work together to deliver for the community and to keep the economy moving for everyone.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Minister Cash, first supplementary.
Thank you. The Prime Minister has been forced to adopt both Angus Taylor and Matt Canavan's policy to halve the fuel tax. Will the Prime Minister guarantee that the fuel excise cut is passed through to motorists in full before the weekend, that is Easter, particularly in regional and outer suburban areas where families have no choice but to drive?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
It should be passed on in full. I think the Prime Minister and the Treasurer were asked this very question in the press conference just now, and the Treasurer spoke about the additional powers that the ACCC has and will and should utilise in the event that petrol stations do not pass this reduction in excise through at the bowser. And in relation to rural and regional Australia, again, I think the Treasurer and the Prime Minister, Prime Minister and the Treasurer both spoke about the fact that one of the things that the Cabinet had very front of mind in making this decision was the impact on regional and rural Australia. As you say, Senator, it's correct that they often don't have the choice.
Please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
President, again it's relevant. I want to know about the government's plan for 4 days' time, by Good Friday when people are driving?
Thank you, Senator Cash. The minister is being directly relevant to your question. Minister Wong.
I'm surprised you don't want to talk about rural and regional Australia, Senator, which was part of your question. That's what I was responding to. What I was trying to say before the relevance point interrupted was we had very front of mind.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Given that there's more fuel in the economy or circulating in the economy than prior to the war beginning, what is the Prime Minister's plan to get the fuel to those empty pumps before Good Friday?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
National Cabinet met today and adopted a national fuel security plan.
By Friday?
And that is one of the distribution of fuel is one of, but not the only element that we are dealing with this as the impact of this global energy shock goes throughout our economy. We are dealing with that. We are dealing with supply. We are dealing with the effect on many other supply chains in the economy. We know that this requires perhaps not unprecedented, because we've seen Australia respond before, but a high level of coordination between state and territory governments and the Commonwealth, and that's what
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Of order on relevance. You've had 5 weeks. What is your plan to get the fuel there by Friday?
Thank you, Senator Cash. The minister's just indicated she's finished her answer. Senator Ghosh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Today the Prime Minister announced that National Cabinet agreed to the National Fuel Security Plan to coordinate a consistent response across the country in response to the energy supply shock driven by conflict in the Middle East. How is the Albanese government working with states and territories to ensure Australia's critical fuel security?
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Wong.
Thank you very much, Senator Ghosh. And, as you say, Iran's weaponisation of the Strait is causing an unprecedented shock to global oil and gas supply. I've spoken about this for some time. It is obviously impacting energy markets and fuel prices worldwide, and this is pushing up fuel prices in our economy for consumers and businesses. The difficult fact is that as the conflict goes on, and the longer it goes on, the worse the impact will be for Australians and for the world. The global outlook remains unpredictable and volatile, and it is the responsibility of all governments across Australia to plan for every scenario. And that is why today National Cabinet agreed to the National Fuel Security Plan to coordinate a consistent response across the Commonwealth states and territories, working together through these challenges, step by step, with a comprehensive and staged approach. We recognise the importance of fuel not only to our economy but to the Australian way of life, and we are committed to keeping Australia open and keeping the economy going. The National Fuel Security Plan will keep the community and businesses updated. It will provide early understanding of fuel security, and it will provide early understanding of fuel security measures that may be required. Early voluntary action, coupled with new supply measures, can reduce the need for stronger measures in the future. We encourage Australians to only use the fuel you need and to make voluntary choices to use less and avoid the impact of higher fuel prices. I note some states have taken action to reduce public transport fares as well. Obviously, the less fuel that is used in Australia's cities, the more that can be directed to regional areas which are under pressure. Every Australian can play our part in making sure fuel gets to those who need it most.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh, first supplementary.
Minister, you've indicated that the National Fuel Security Plan is comprehensive and it involves a staged approach to ensuring that Commonwealth and states and territories work together to secure Australia's fuel supply. What are the levels outlined in the plan, and why is a comprehensive and staged approach so important?
Great question.
Thank you, Senator Ghosh. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Ghosh, and you're right. A comprehensive and staged plan is important. It's the responsible thing to do. And our collective approach to fuel security through the National Fuel Security Plan is guided by 4 levels of response. The first, plan and prepare, is what the government has been doing. We are now at level 2, keeping Australia moving, and this involves the government taking precautionary action to shore up fuel supply, like our plan to underwrite the purchase of fuel by the private sector, to give private suppliers confidence to secure additional cargoes and to help boost supply into Australia. Levels 3 and 4, taking targeted action and protecting critical services, would occur due to ongoing supply disruptions and see a more targeted focus on getting fuel to where it is most needed. Australians can be confident that the government has a plan to deal with whatever comes at us at all levels.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ghosh, second supplementary.
The Albanese Labor government has been taking immediate action while also planning ahead to shield Australians from the impact of global energy supply shocks. Why is it important that governments and all Australians work together to face this challenge?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. Our government has taken early action on supply and continues to act to support Australians. And today we have announced halving the fuel excise on petrol and diesel and on diesel for 3 months. The halving of the excise will reduce the cost of fuel by 26.3 cents per litre. States and territories are also working on a proposal to ensure they will not benefit from the elevated prices that are flowing through to the GST take. We are making fuel cheaper today because we understand Australians are under serious pressure. Our government will also reduce the heavy vehicle road user charge to 0 for 3 months to help truckies continue their vital work for our nation. And today we have introduced legislation for the government to underwrite the purchase of fuel by the private sector. I want to acknowledge the constructive response from state and territory governments, working as one, which is what Australians expect of their political leaders.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McGrath.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, a grain farmer has told the North Queensland Register he has spent more than $1.5 million just securing enough fuel to sow this season, and if supply doesn't hold, he will halve his planting program. Wow. Minister, what is this government's plan if grain farmers halve their planting?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
Senator McGrath identifies one of the many problems that the government has been seeking to address, and that is the downstream effects, the knock-on effects of a lack of supply in fuel to many parts of the economy, but particularly of particular importance to Australian agriculture, and that is correct. And that is why the government now has been working on additional supply. Not only in the work that Minister Bone has done over a number of weeks, but in the announcement that the Prime Minister and the Minister made over the weekend, which will enable the underwriting of private sector purchases of fuel. That is all about securing additional fuel for our economy. So it is an additional supply measure, precisely because we recognise that we need fuel throughout our economy. We also recognise, particularly, as Senator McGrath says, the impact of any lack of supply or inconsistency of supply on particular industries, including agriculture. The National Fuel Security Plan goes through how state and territory governments will work with us.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath.
Just on a point of order in relation to relevance, the question was in relation to grain farmers halving their planting. And I was wondering if the minister could address that, please.
The minister's being relevant to your question, Senator McGrath, and I'll continue to listen carefully. Minister Wong.
You asked about the impact on agriculture of fuel security, and I answered by talking about fuel security and more supply. If you do not think that is relevant, it says something about the opposition's lack of understanding of the policy challenges, lack of understanding of those opposite about the policy challenges that the country faces. So what we are seeking to do is to secure more supply. What we are seeking to do is to secure more supply.
Order. Minister Wong, have you concluded? Or yep, thank you.
Seeking to do is to secure more supply for farmers, for regional communities and for the country. And that is because we understand the consequences of not doing so. That is the announcements that we have made and the fuel security.
Has expired. Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, it is no longer a fuel crisis. It is now a fuel and fertiliser crisis. Urea prices have nearly doubled from $800 to $1,500 a tonne. Wow. The latest Rabobank Rural Confidence Survey shows farmer confidence has crashed to -20. Grain farmers are warning that combined fuel and fertiliser costs will markedly lower Australia's wheat production even if the conflict is resolved tomorrow. Does the government now accept that the planting window is closing and the damage to this year's harvest may already be done?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
No, what we would say to farmers is we absolutely understand the importance of ensuring sufficient supply, not only of fuel or of fertiliser. We understand it is not only critical for your businesses, but it is critical for the national economy and for Australians everywhere. And that is why the new Export Finance Australia underwriting powers, which I have referenced, which were announced on Saturday, well, you know, Senator, it just shows your lack of understanding, Senator McKenzie.
Order.
Really.
Order.
So, is precisely
McKenzie, come to
because
order.
of the consequences such as those to which you refer, Senator McGrath. And the EFA underwriting powers are designed to de-risk additional uncontracted shipments of key products, directed at regions and industries suffering shortages, and we are very conscious of the importance of fertiliser.
Expired. Senator McGrath, second supplementary. Yes, second supplementary.
Minister, farmers can't get diesel, they can't afford fertiliser, and some can't even keep water pumps running for livestock because their tanks are dry. The Rabobank survey says limited access to fuel and fertiliser means some growers will simply not plant in 2026. When these crops aren't harvested and food prices go through the roof, will this government finally take responsibility, or will it keep telling farmers and families there's no need to panic?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
We all want farmers to plant. And that is why we have moved to shore up those supply chains, both for fuel and for fertiliser, both urea-based and ammonium phosphate-based fertilisers. So I would just make this point. We all understand the consequences of this conflict into our economy, including into agriculture. And the government made a very conscious decision to ensure that the EFA powers were not just directed at fuel, but were directed at the other lines, supply chains, including urea, which are so critical for the Australian economy and for our food security.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong, representing the Prime Minister. Over the weekend, we saw Victoria and Tasmania announce their plans to make public transport free, as the Greens have been campaigning for several weeks. The government supported this illegal war, which has led to the fuel crisis. Free public transport would give cost of living relief and reduce demand in the cities, and thus free up fuel for our regions, for farmers. New South Wales is saying that cost is the barrier to them also making public transport free. The National Cabinet just wrapped up and there was no announcement about public transport. Why are you refusing to reduce demand in this fuel crisis by funding the states to introduce free public transport to help families, farmers and fuel security?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Wong.
Well, first, on the provision of free or lower-cost public transport, we welcome that, and that is a good thing. That is a good thing. And I understand that Victoria and Tasmania already have done so, that other states and territories have also looked at lower-cost public transport, and obviously the more that we can, through voluntary measures and through choice, can reduce our fuel usage, particularly in the cities, then obviously the more capacity there is to address some of those distributional challenges that we are seeing in regional Australia, which, as Senator McGrath correctly points out, has impacts on our economy now, but also into the future. So we welcome states and territories who do that. The government has put in place a very substantial package today. There is obviously a significant cost to the budget from the fuel and diesel excise reduction and the heavy vehicle road user charge changes that we have put in place, but we believe that they are important at a time where we see fuel prices where they are as a consequence of this conflict. And I will just take issue, if I may, with the way in which the Australian Greens continue to run a political argument but never recognise the choice that Iran has made the choice that Iran has made about how it's responding, including attacking civilian targets. I await their condemnation of Iran attacking non-combatant nations, and I await your condemnation of Iran attacking civilian targets, and I await your condemnation of Iran holding the Strait of Hormuz and therefore the international fuel markets hostage. I look forward to it.
Senator Waters, first supplementary. Come to order, Senator Shoebridge. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Well, we clearly condemn all war crimes and this illegal war. Gas corporations continue to make windfall wartime profits, and ordinary people are paying the price, while gas companies profit from their pain. A 25% gas tax would generate $17 billion in revenue, and with the Greens you have the numbers to pass a gas export tax of at least 25%. Why won't you stare down the greedy gas corporations and make them finally pay their fair share so we can fund free public transport and other cost of living?
Minister Wong. Senator.
Just ask for your direction as to how that supplementary question can be in any way relevant to the primary question.
Thank you. We'll seek the advice of the clerk. I think parts of it are relevant. I'll inform the Senate that your first question, Senator Waters, was about public transport fees, and now your second question is largely about tax. So I'm going to invite Minister Wong to answer it in order. Order. I'm making the decisions here, Senator Waters, not you. I will ask Minister Wong to answer the question in whatever way she thinks fits. Minister
I will do so, but I would say from public transport to tax is quite a long. Well, that has never been the rule in the Senate about supplementary questions, and I'd invite you to have a look at Odgers, but that's not up to you. Senator, I know this is a position of the Greens political party. I certainly understand that there is a focus on this. The government will consider all of the public policy implications of many of the proposals which have been put to us prior to the budget and in the context of the budget.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
If this crisis has taught us anything, it's that we need to end our dependence on fossil fuels. We could be electrifying trucks which transport our food around the country. However, your government has indicated that the electric vehicle fringe benefits tax exemption is on the chopping block in this year's budget.
Order.
In a fuel crisis, will this budget help support electrifying our transport system and helping people to buy electric vehicles?
Senator Watt.
President, again, I mean, question time is not a magical mystery tour
Senator
across
Watt,
the Greens
it's also
platform.
not a time to make statements.
But again, I seek your direction as to whether that supplementary is relevant.
And towards the end of Senator Waters' question, she did tie it back to the fuel crisis, so the question is relevant. Minister Wong.
We'll make decisions in the budget context.
Senator Polley.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. Global energy market supply chains remain disrupted, and in response, National Cabinet met today to coordinate future planning and action. The Albanese Labor government recently announced new powers for the Export Finance Australia to underwrite imports. Can you, Minister, please update the Senate on these new powers and explain how they will help secure fuel supply?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Ayres.
Well, thank you, President, and thanks, Senator Polley, for that question. The Albanese Labor government is acting to shield Australia from fuel and supply chain shocks. In this case, as the question points out, by giving Export Finance Australia the power to underwrite additional cargoes of fuel and other strategic products, including, of course, fertiliser. The bill to give EFA that power was introduced or will be introduced into the House today. That additional supply will help address regional shortages and fill critical supply gaps, in particular in fuel and in fertiliser. We are squarely focused on additional supply, not just for fuel, but for fertiliser in particular. That is consistent with all of the other measures that this government has undertaken, including, I must say, the intervention that the government made into Glencore's copper smelter facility in Mount Isa, which means that the Dyno Nobel Phosphate Hill facility is not closing in 2 days' time, but is continuing to operate as Australia's only current domestic producer of fertiliser products. We are not replacing or undercutting the operation of the domestic market. We are making sure that private suppliers can secure additional shipments themselves that are otherwise too risky to order. EFA will use its deep expertise in insurance and indemnity, commercial guarantees and loans to de-risk those additional shipments and to deliver supply in fuel and fertiliser terms, in particular for regional Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley, first supplementary.
Thank you for that reassuring answer, Minister. Through you, President, can the Minister please update the Senate on other actions agreed at National Cabinet, and how will they increase our fuel security and help protect households and businesses?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Ayres.
Well, thank you, President. Thanks again, Senator Polley. Minister Wong earlier described the National Fuel Security Plan that was adopted by National Cabinet this morning. That is about making sure that Australia has one plan for fuel security, not 9 plans for fuel security. We've made additional announcements, the Albanese Labor government today, halving the fuel excise, which will lower the costs for households and businesses of fuel for ordinary Australians, because we understand that Australians and Australian businesses and Australian farmers are under pressure. We're also lowering the heavy vehicle road user charge to 0 for 3 months, and we'll delay the planned increase in that charge by 6 months. This will help trucking firms with immediate fuel costs and ensure that they continue.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley, second supplementary.
President, the Albanese Labor government is coordinating with state and territory governments on fuel security and has prioritised clear, consistent planning to protect Australians from global fuel supply shocks, showing leadership. Why has the government chosen this approach?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Ayres.
Well, thanks, President. This conflict is an unprecedented shock to global energy markets, and the longer it goes on, the more significant its impacts on Australians. And of course, in that context, Australians are looking to their governments for reassurance. The outlook is uncertain. Fuel prices have been rising for all Australians, and some farmers, businesses and regional communities are experiencing shortages. That means governments must be clear with Australians and explain what is happening and give a measured assessment of risks. That's why we've convened National Cabinet. That's why the Prime Minister and other ministers have been explaining clearly and calmly what it is that our approach is. All of the measures that have been undertaken in sequence over the course of the period since this conflict has started have all been in the national interest, have all been about—
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Barbara Pocock.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing, Senator Ayres. Inflation is hitting Australians hard, Many households are just 1 or 2 interest rate or rent hikes away from losing their homes. Over the past 4 years, since coming to power in 2022, Labor's wasted $53 billion on tax concessions for wealthy property investors, money that's benefited top-income earners and investors while pushing up housing prices and fuelling the crisis. This is $53 billion which could have gone to building public social housing for ordinary Australians. A further $190 billion will be wasted over the next decade if Labor continues with these massive tax benefits. Minister, will you commit to scrapping the tax breaks at the May budget as a down payment on housing equality?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Ayres.
Well, in relation to tax policy and into the government's fiscal settings, of course, I'm sure that you'll be waiting, as all of us will be, for announcements that the government makes in the budget in the normal way. But our approach on these issues hasn't changed. Our focus is on delivering tax cuts for every taxpayer. The Treasurer and the Prime Minister, Housing Minister has acknowledged there are, of course, intergenerational issues in housing and tax, and we've got a big agenda to deal with those issues. Intergenerational equity was indeed one of the big reasons behind our tax cuts for every Australian taxpayer. Tax cuts that the Liberals and Nationals said, when they went with their big taxing approach to the last election, tax cuts that they said they would reverse. When that was the position of the Liberal and National parties on intergenerational equity, that they wanted to lift taxes for working Australians, lift taxes for ordinary Australians. That was the Taylor proposition. That was Mr Taylor's proposition. That was Senator Canavan's proposition. Was to lift taxes for ordinary.
Senator Pocock.
Relevance, President. I was made no inquiry about what the opposition are up to. I was asking about your
Thank
policy.
you, Senator Pocock. I will direct the minister back to your question. Minister Ayres.
Well, just say that the Labor Party is the only party in this place that's capable of delivering a fairer, simpler and more sustainable tax system that deals with those issues that you have included in your question. And our approach on housing more broadly is, as you know, squarely focused on the questions and challenges of supply. That is the questions of making sure that the private market and the Australian government's investments through the Housing Affordability Future Fund and all of the other raft of measures that we've undertaken are directed towards building more houses. Thank you, Minister. The time for answering
has expired. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, anyone watching the HAF closely knows it is not touching the sides of the housing crisis we face. Many Australians are feeling anxious, and no wonder. An illegal war is causing inflation. We're seeing interest rate hikes instead of cuts. We're seeing house prices spike, rents skyrocket and groceries upwards. Big corporations, fossil fuel companies, arms companies, Coles, Woolworth, duopoly and wealthy property investors are raking in huge profits. Minister, why is the government prioritising the 1% over ordinary people struggling to make ends meet and get a roof and hold a roof over their heads?
Minister Ayres.
Well, this government, President, this government is a government that has come to office in our second term with a plan to deliver tax cuts for every single Australian. For every single Australian. Having delivered tax cuts for every single Australian and done the work that has been led by formerly Minister Watt and now Minister Rishworth in the employment relations portfolio to lift wages and to make sure that Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn. And it's this government that has a very large agenda in housing and construction, driven by Minister O'Neill, to put public effort into support the private sector to build more homes in a more aggressive way than any previous government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
That Your policies are making things worse. The 5% home deposit scheme has pushed prices up and made it much tougher for those out there looking for a home. Renters and first-home buyers are being pushed into housing stress as interest rates keep going up. While they struggle to keep their one home, they watch the wealthy 1% buy their 4th, their 5th, their 20th. Minister, how do you think Australians feel when they see people like the Reserve Bank Governor buy a 4th house worth more than $2 million on the same day as the last rate increase,
thank you, Senator
as they
Pollack,
struggle to fund their own housing?
The time for asking has expired. Minister Ayres.
So, thanks, President. Well, the senator asks about our plan that we've delivered to make sure that Australians' first home buyers can secure a home with a smaller deposit. You ask about that. You indicate that you're opposed to it. Our friends across the chamber here, and the Liberals and Nationals, and I think One Nation, you all wanted to vote against it. You've all opposed it. But I can tell you that, for first home buyers, and only that cohort—
Minister Ayres, I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
I've called for order. When I was calling for order, Senator McKenzie, you just continued to yell over the top of me. Extremely disrespectful, as did you, Senator McKim. Minister Ayres, please continue.
Well, the 5% off that home deposit may be a talking point for the Greens political party and the Liberals and Nationals in something to oppose. But I tell you what, for the first home buyers who are eligible for it, it means a lot. It means a lot. It means a lot, and it's delivering for thousands of ordinary Australians now.
Thank you, Minister. The time for asking has expired. Senator McKenzie.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Jet fuel has increased in the past 14 days, up by 90 cents per litre. For bulk supplies, this means about a 70% increase in fuel price. Prices vary, but bulk fuel is about $1.70 per litre nearer major depots and up to $2.40 in remote areas. What is the Prime Minister's plan for managing a jet fuel or avgas shortage, and how is this to be communicated?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to the senator. Jet fuel is obviously one of the areas that we have been focused on. I think Minister Bowen has spoken about this previously, that we have an effect on Australian markets as a consequence of the effect on global markets, probably the largest energy shock in many decades, and that conflict is placing pressure on supply chains across the economy. It is placing pressure on a number of liquid fuels. The government's doing a number of things. The first is obviously to continue to engage with international partners, to continue to engage with industry, and to continue to look to secure alternative supplies. I refer you to my earlier answers in response to your colleagues about the announcements the government has made over the last few days.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McKenzie, first supplementary.
That's a very disappointing answer, Minister. The fire season has abruptly stopped in many places, but aviation fuels are a key part of responding to floods, such as the impact of Cyclone Narelle. Is there sufficient aviation fuel in the system to manage Australia's response to emergencies like Cyclone Narelle without stopping supply to agriculture or transport aviation?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Wong.
Will I again indicate to you, Senator, we are working to secure supply through in global markets and through our engagement with partners. You have seen that occur over these last weeks. Both myself and the Prime Minister with international partners who are our major suppliers of a range of liquid fuels.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie.
Point of order on direct relevance, Madam President. The previous answer I allowed the minister a lot of leeway.
Senator McKenzie, we've moved
but this is they either have the supply onshore and know where it is, or they don't.
Senator McKenzie, resume your seat. It's not a time for a very long point of... you're not in a debate with me. You've asked a point of order. The minister is being relevant. I will continue to listen carefully. Minister Wong.
Senator would be aware, I would hope, that jet fuel is one of the liquid fuels subject to the minimum stock holding obligation, and that at the moment, as I understand it—
Order. 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 The question's been asked. I am listening carefully to the answer. Minister Wong, did you wish to continue?
As I was trying to explain, and I think you're part of the government that did say you were moving to the MSO. The minimum stock holding obligation is the mechanism by which we ensure fuel is held to deal with supply constraints concerns that you are raising. The advice I have, and I'll come back and add further information
Thank you, Minister.
if I'm wrong, is that we have
has
in excess—
expired. Senator McKenzie, second supplementary.
Winter planting for crops in many areas is about to start, which would usually mean an increase in aerial work. What is the Prime Minister doing to ensure that the agriculture sector will be supported and that there will be no disruption to critical aerial operations due to aviation fuel shortages during peak planting season?
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Wong.
As I was trying to respond when that question, when I ran out of time, jet fuel is one of the liquid fuels that is subject to the minimum stock holding obligation, and the government continues to work to ensure that more supply arrives in Australia, including through engagement with global partners. The fuel plan that the Prime Minister announced earlier goes to the ways in which we will work with states and territories to address this, including in relation to jet fuel.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. Well, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Your government's response to Australia's fuel supply problem is temporary and inadequate and does not address the fundamental problem of Australia's lack of long-term fuel security. Will your government commit to resuming full-time oil and gas exploration to ensure Australia has necessary long-term supplies of these essential fuels?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, I think Senator Ayres went to this last week, where, in response to Senator Canavan, he pointed out that some of the exploration that Senator Canavan, in opposition or in government, had been advocating was actually not commercially viable. I would make the point that since 2022 the government has released areas in released 10 areas in northern Carnarvon, Browse and other basins for offshore exploration in August 2022, released areas in the Otway and Sorrel basins for offshore exploration in December 2025 and granted 5 offshore exploration permits.
Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Minister, this fuel supply crisis has served to expose Australia's extreme dependency on fuel from overseas and our vulnerability to global economic shocks like that caused by the war in the Middle East. Will your government help secure Australia's future by establishing and supporting the sovereign oil and petroleum manufacturing industry which meets all of our fuel needs?
Order. Senator Whish-Wilson, this is not your question, and you will listen in silence. Minister Wong. I'm sorry, Senator Wong. Senator Whish-Wilson, I've just called you to order. Either listen in silence or leave the chamber. That's the choice. Minister Wong. Senator Shoebridge, it is not an invitation for you to start up. Order applies across the chamber, and it's disrespectful when I've called for order to continue to shout out. Minister Wong.
Senator, it is the first part of your question. There a couple of points which the government itself has made, which is that we are at the end of global supply chains and we need to increase our national resilience, including in energy. As you would be aware, Senator, 4 out of 6 refineries closed under a coalition government, and as I've previously said, I'm not sure. Yes, I'm not sure that you criticised them at the time, Senator. Maybe you did. No, but my observation would be, the parties of the right, the Grand Coalition of One Nation, the National Party, and the Liberal Party. You're not very hard on them sometimes. Can I make this point that drilling in the Great Australian Bight was abandoned when Senator Canavan was in government. The coal to liquids is rare but expensive. Would make the point that it is.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Minister, Labor and the Greens have routinely demonised fossil fuels despite the fact Australia relies on them now and will into the future. Does the government acknowledge it got this wrong and take the necessary steps to support fossil fuels by scrapping net zero and the national self-harm it is causing? You've destroyed this country. You have been so responsible.
Order. Senator Whish-Wilson, once again. Seriously. Minister Wong will be heard in silence. Minister Wong.
Ensuring the country is resilient to international shocks, whether it's conflict in the Middle East, the Ukraine war, or the other geopolitical uncertainty, requires us to work across to ensure supply resilience. Requires us to ensure that we have diverse options. So, Senator, I disagree with you. If your lesson out of this global energy crisis is that we should not be transitioning to renewables, which of themselves, obviously, are a sovereign capability.
Senator Canavan.
Senator, but at the same time, Senator, it is the case that making
Order. Order. Senator Watt and Senator Canavan. Order. Senator Canavan, I've called you and yet you call out again. Minister Wong, did you have anything further to add?
Thank you. We want Australia to be energy secure. And what we will do, and what we are doing, Senator, is unlike you, we don't have an ideological view, but we will look at all the different—
Thank you, Minister Wong. Thank you. Senator Babet.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Minister, can you confirm whether Australia has imported in recent years refined fuel products from countries that process Russian crude oil? Thank you.
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator. I've answered this question before and I've probably got a brief in it here, so I'll see how I go. But what I've indicated previously is that both under our government and also under the coalition government, obviously substantial bans were put in place in respect of the importation of Russian fuel, and I know you have a different view about Ukraine and a different view about President Putin, and I fundamentally and substantially disagree with your position. We have sanctioned the importation of Russian fuel because we don't believe that it is a good thing to fuel the Russian war machine so they can kill more Ukrainian citizens in their attempt to take territory. I know you have a different view, Senator. In terms of substantially transformed oil products, I indicated previously to the Senate on this, it is very difficult for countries to ascertain the origin of all the original crude oil origin of all of the substantially transformed products that we import. We have encouraged supply chain disclosure and supply chain assurance from those who are importing from countries overseas where those products are refined.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Babet, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Now, according to a report released last year by the Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air, Australia is the biggest buyer of Russian oil via Turkish and Indian refineries. Did your government grant a permit for these imports, or did you just look the other way?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister Wong.
Senator, I think I've just explained the policy technical problem to you. I've been upfront about that. I know, including with the Ukrainian community, have raised this with me. There isn't a system of assurance in terms of what happens after Russian oil may have gone to different refineries and then the products which might come out of it in whatever proportion. But what we have done is engage with industry and encourage them to be transparent and to assure their supply chains, as much as they are able, to avoid contributing to Mr Putin's war machine.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Babet, second supplementary.
Minister, is it time to admit that Australia, whether we like it or not, needs Russian oil? Is it in the national interest to permit the import of all fuels, even if the products originate from Russian crude that's processed in other countries? At the end of the day, it's about Australia's national interest first.
Thank you, Senator. Order on my right. Minister Wong.
With respect, Senator Babet, your support for President Putin's regime is a disgrace.
Senator Little.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, Bruce Boss is a 72-year-old man in regional South Australia with kidney failure who must travel up to 3 times a week for dialysis. He says he has been forced to cut his budget to survival-type rations just to cope. With fuel scarce in parts of regional Australia, how is the government guaranteeing that Australians who rely on their cars for life-saving medical treatment can access fuel when and where they need it?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Obviously, I wish Mr Boss, my thoughts are with Mr Boss in his management of his medical condition. It's a very difficult situation for him and for his family. Secondly, I hope that the announcements that we have made today in relation to fuel excise and diesel excise will be of assistance to Mr Boss. As I was trying to answer in response to one of your colleagues, that the Cabinet did have very front of mind the impact on... Really?
Hello.
The impact on rural and regional Australia of elevated fuel prices, because, as you correctly point out, there are issues of price and supply. Elevated fuel prices as a consequence of the impact on global energy markets. What I'd also say in terms of supply, we have done a number of things. First, the government has released 20% of, has begun release of 20% of the minimum stock holding obligations, with a focus on regional Australia because of the supply issues that you identify, Senator. Secondly, we announced on Saturday EFA underwriting the attaining of additional supply, and finally we will work with states, territories and also the distributors to try and deal with the distribution problems which we absolutely understand are affecting Australians, particularly in regions.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Little, first supplementary.
Minister, Belinda Menzies from Beaudesert, Queensland, and her family all live with significant health issues and are now cutting back on driving to medical appointments because of the fuel crisis, saying they fear a decline in their health. Minister, what immediate steps has the government taken to ensure that Australians are not forced to ration essential medical travel because fuel is either unaffordable or unavailable?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
Well, look, the government wants Ms Menzies and her family, just as we want Mr Boss, to be able to access medical support. This is a Labor government. This is a government that has put more money and funding into Medicare than any previous government, because health is such a priority for us and for the country. In terms of supply and price, I'd refer you to my earlier answer. We've sought to put more fuel into regional Australia through the release from the minimum stockholding obligations. We are seeking to obtain more fuel through underwriting private sector purchase of more fuel on the open market, and we are working with the private sector and states and territories to deal with distribution issues.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Little, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. I know that hope and want don't necessarily do it, but can the government guarantee that before Easter, Australians in regional communities will be able to both access fuel and rely on it being there when they need to get to critical medical appointments?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
Again, the government is seeking to obtain more supply into regional areas, including through the releasing of 20% of the minimum stockholding obligations. The government is seeking getting more fuel from overseas through underwriting private purchase, and we will work with states and territories on distribution. That is what we are doing. And in addition to that, obviously there's been the reduction in the excise, which I referred to earlier.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darmanin.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance. Today at National Cabinet, the Albanese Labor government brought together state and territory leaders to further respond to the fuel crisis stemming from the conflict in the Middle East. Can the Minister please update the chamber on the announcements made following the National Cabinet? And further, what is the government doing to ensure that we are set up to respond to a rapidly changing geopolitical and economic environment?
Thank you, Senator Darmanin. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Darmanin for the question and the opportunity to update the Senate, in addition to Senator Wong's contributions during question time today, about the important meeting that was held this morning, the second meeting of National Cabinet since this conflict began, and the decisions and actions that have been taken as a result of it. And there are a number of things that have happened since the conflict began. Obviously, we've passed new laws to double penalties for petrol companies that engage in price gouging, misleading conduct or cartel behaviour. We've released 20% of Australia's fuel reserves, targeted to ease pressure, particularly in regional markets, and to protect supply for critical users. We've temporarily adjusted petrol and diesel standards to increase available supply and to keep fuel moving through the system. And we've importantly engaged with international partners and suppliers to support continued shipments and strengthen supply chain resilience, and that's an important part of our response and, of course, has been supported by the work that we've done in strengthening relationships with international partners since coming to government, being led by Senator Wong and Senator Farrell, in addition to other ministers. We've appointed Anthea Harris as the National Fuel Supply Task Force Coordinator to drive whole-of-government coordination with states and territories, industries and key stakeholders. We've provided some additional support in financial counselling support for impacted farmers, because we know that there have been there's certainly pressures that land very hard in the regions. Today, the Albanese government has taken further action by cutting the fuel excise by half and reducing the heavy vehicle road user charge to zero for 3 months. We've also introduced bills to ensure the government can respond quickly to urgent and unforeseen fuel security challenges that may arise between now and when the parliament resumes.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Darmanin, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Today, the Albanese Labor government introduced bills to ensure that the government can take action, if needed, to source fuel from around the globe for use at home here in Australia. How will this ensure fuel supplies arrive in Australia?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. And guaranteeing supply and doing everything we can, using every possible avenue to ensure fuel supply across the country, has been central to the work that the Prime Minister has been leading, along with other ministers, over the last 5 weeks. In terms of the bills that have been introduced, there are amendments to enable EFA to support industry to source cargoes overseas. There are also, through the EFIC Act being introduced today, these measures will ensure a joined-up approach to scaling production and distribution at home and sourcing fuel from overseas. In addition to that, we have introduced a bill to increase the advance to the Finance Minister by an additional $2 billion to provide flexibility to support fuel security response measures and related expenditure where funding needs cannot be met through existing appropriations up to the 30th of June.
Senator Darmanin, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. The National Fuel Security Plan agreed at National Cabinet today sets out clear stages to manage access to fuel as this international conflict continues. How has today's National Cabinet ensured that leaders across the country are working together to provide cost of living assistance and planning for the future?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. And today, National Cabinet bringing all of our government's leaders together, First Ministers together, to drive a coordinated response led by the Prime Minister to manage demand and prioritise supply. National Cabinet agreed to encourage Australians to only use the fuel they need, and I think it would be great if other political leaders supported that approach, creating a 4-stage plan to manage domestic fuel security, to continue to monitor demand and supply nationally, tracking shipments in transit and watch for emerging regional pinch points, to continue engagement with international partners and working with industry so additional cargoes can be secured and directed to critical gaps if needed, continue contingency planning with states and territories and stand ready to take further action to safeguard Australia's fuel security. Any shift in level will be signalled by the National Cabinet, including through consultation with relevant industries and sectors to ensure these measures work efficiently.
Be placed on
the